So I think you guys are in very, very good hands, and you in the audience have something to look forward to. We are going to talk about Baltic unicorns in the maritime industry. Is it even possible? Only Kristin wants to be one. Kristin does not, I know that. Okay.
Hey, thank you. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, before I sit down here, I have 2 good news and 1 bad one. So the good news is that we are the last one. And afterwards you will have fantastic dinner here, so it's good. It's good that this is going to be over. But then another good news is that you know that nobody says the most important things at the beginning. It's just like in movies or in books. It's always at the end. So those who are here until the end, you will most probably hear the most important things out of this conference. But then there is a bad news that I'm not Inga Langaite, the lady that's supposed to be moderating this panel. And I know she would have done that much better, but let's try to do that together. All right, so we will have a screen. On that screen, we will use a thing called Menti. On that Menti, we will be using it. I'm just trying to see why can't we see it changing. Technicians, is that on your primary screen? Yes, fantastic. So you have already heard about our panelists, but we have not also mentioned that all of you guys are also very important to participate. And by participation, you have to go to this menti.com and enter the code 82919117. So once you can do that, please let me know by pressing either cat, like, or heart. It's actually down there, but you can't see it. So if you take your phone, you go menti.com, you enter this code, and then we can talk to each other. And once you are here, you will have the first question, which is actually addressed not to the panelists, but to you. So right after this whole day listening about blue economy, you have already some associations, whether this is a great future, this is promising, this is groundbreaking, or this is pessimistic, or maybe legacy. So please let us know what you think, and I'm joining my panelists. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So first question, since the audience already know the definition of the unicorns, can we start with a quick overview what's happening in the Baltic region? Do we have startups or future unicorns that are promising? Who would have an answer?
I think Rita has to answer.
Rita, have you met any?
Yeah, so the answer is absolutely we do. And these unicorns are coming up at an ever faster pace right now, especially in the Baltic region I can speak to. And that is because we are becoming a more mature startup market, and we're starting to see more and more higher valued companies coming out of this region, which means that they're attracting bigger investments. And of course, a unicorn means that they're valued at $1 billion. And how do they become valued at $1 billion? It's because they're able to attract an investment size that makes them valued at over $1 billion.
Okay, and how is that landscape look like in Norway?
I would say that that has increased tremendously over the last 10, 15 years. In the beginning, our investment milieu was quite unsophisticated, and you probably can agree to that. There was you had a lot of FFFs, but not very much VC capital. And then you had big capital that could go on and participate in IPOs and larger private placements and so. But there was a definite gap in the market, which is closing, I would say. And there's also now foreign capital coming into Norway, which is also helping that situation.
So I would like to comment a little bit on that. I think in Norway we are very good in the first stage. Like we don't have so many friends, families, and fools maybe, but we have Innovation Norway. And we have the public funding, which is actually quite easy to access. So it's easy in Norway to start a company. It's easy to have a company go through the first step. But then we are lacking the next step. I'm not sure if I agree with you either on the, like things are changing. I think as long as we are not able to like push the companies through the second phase, we will not reach into a unicorn. But I don't necessarily think a unicorn is the most attractive stage either, because what is a unicorn? You heard it was defined by the value of the company. The value of the company for whom? I mean, for the government and in a country, you talk about workspaces and you talk about employment. For an owner of a company, you talk about the value, but how do you realize the value? I mean, the only thing you can do is actually to sell shares. And you just heard me earlier that I was crying because Goldman Sachs bought my company. Did it make me happy? No, it didn't. So, I mean, it also depends on who you are. I would say in Norway, very good in the stage one, not so good to like attract investors for the next stage. But then if you reach the next stage, Norwegian company is super affordable. I mean, they are cheap. So people from other countries, they look into Norway and say, oh, let's buy some Norwegian company. They are so very, very cheap to buy. And that's actually a tragic thing in Norway. So don't let that happen in Lithuania.
I think it's happening.
Wow, this is the first time I hear Norway is cheap. Maybe I'll go to buy some companies then.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah, but looking to our audience regarding the blue economy, everyone thinks this is a future that's clean, that's sustainable, and many, many other positive things. So my question is following: what actually prevents, for the startups to be flourishing and booming in this sector? And at the same time, I would like to ask audience, what do you think, what's the importance of the unicorns in maritime industry? And so, what are those barriers?
To become a unicorn?
No. To start a startup in this maritime sector.
That's a long story. How much time do you have? For me, as I said, it's easy to register a company. I mean, that takes 30,000 NOK, and you have to go into brønnøysund.no, and then it's done. Actually, you can do that in 10 minutes. But the problem then is not actually that you have. Also, that's the start, and then you have to build this company, as also the Danish guy said. You can't do it alone. So you need to decide then what to do. And in Norway, so we are competing international, also for startups. You're competing if you're looking into the maritime industry, because that's an international industry. In Norway, we need to pay salaries, very decent salaries, I have to say, from day one. It's not possible to walk around in Manhattan and tell people about dreams and that they get share options, and if you join my company, they will become rich. You need to pay people a decent salary from day one. That's a challenge. So, I mean, if you're able to get through a kind of decent negotiations with the first employees, you are at least in a kind of good starting position.
So you are telling that this whole inspiration and passion doesn't sell to the people?
No, because people need salary to buy food and need a place to stay. And some of them also have children, and they need to support them. So no, I would not say that it is easy to get a startup going in this early phase. And I assume that that's why we have Innovation Norway and public funding quite easy available in Norway, because everyone knows it's expensive. Salaries are expensive, but buying companies is very, very cheap. You buy a finished concept, you have proof of concept, you have a good team, we work together, and you can put a value on that one, and you can buy them.
I also have some thoughts. It's people often think of unicorns and then think of Facebook and TikTok and what have you. And they can become unicorns in a year or in a span of 2 years. It's very different if you're in a business-to-business setting than from a business-to-consumer setting. Blue economy, for the most part, will be business-to-business, with the exception of maybe tourism and a few other pockets of it. So it takes a decade to make an overnight success or an apparent overnight success. So you need the patience and you need the grit, you need the money, you need the people, you need all of that. But you don't have to have expectations to become rich overnight. That is.
That's not possible. I'm sorry, guys, that's not possible. Hard work is the only key to success, so that's not possible.
Okay, so maybe from my perspective, I'm going to paint a bit of a rosier picture with the blue economy. And certainly, I think the potential possibilities and opportunities, especially in Lithuania and for Lithuanian startups. Certainly, as we've heard all day today, we're looking at legacy everything. So, I mean, this is ripe for innovation. And I think, Lithuania's got a hotbed of very smart people who know how to innovate, who are learning how to innovate. And we now have the best business angel network in Europe, as voted by the European Business Angel Network this year. We're 264 members who are itching to invest in startups in this region and in Lithuania, certainly. And we have 19 corporations that are also members of the Lithuanian Business Angel Network. And we're just looking for, things to invest in. And I loved these presentations today about these wonderful companies that are doing amazing things that I know nothing about. So that's one thing when you're pitching to a business angel, understand that we know nothing typically about what it is that you're doing. So you need to be very clear on explaining your business model and your business concept. But beyond that, I think if you show that, I mean, look at the numbers here as well. I mean, they're massive, massive opportunities. There's just so many problems that we still haven't solved. So
I would like to give the Lithuanian people a compliment. You are, as I see you guys, you're a small country, but you are proud, you are brave, you are hardworking, and you really want to achieve goals. I think Norway is a country with a lot of oil. We are gaining a lot we are gaining a lot from this crisis now. We sell oil, we sell gas, we sell hydrogen, we actually also capture carbon and we put it down in the oil wells again. So we are actually earning money on all stages. And that becomes nice for a country, but it creates a lot of lazy people. So I really greet you guys because you have it all. Because I think you have that 4 things that is a necessity to be successful as an entrepreneur. Hardworking, passion, never give up. And also then, if you do that, you will actually create something that will attract investors as Rita. And if you also have that in place, that you have angel investors, that you have a kind of community there, then you are successful. You will become successful. Maybe just not overnight, but maybe it takes 5 years, 10 years, and then you're there. And I will greet you. I think you should go for it, all of you.
Yeah, and I support that. And hearing the presentations today, it seems like you have quite fertile grounds for unicorn here with all the changes that are happening. It's happening on a legislative level, it's happening on a geopolitical level that's driving change. And I think that unicorns or startups to become unicorns definitely have a space in there because what they are lacking, they don't have money, they don't have means, they don't have people, but they have speed. And the traditional companies are lacking that. They are slow, the bureaucratic. So there is a symbiosis here between established companies and unicorns in this B2B space.
But if I may, that speed to become a unicorn, it's that long line, as you showed, right? From 2008, I think it was, until today, and how many changes and iterations you have to go through. So you need the grit to be able to bring it to that finish line, which can be way down the line. And I think a lot of unicorns that are coming out of this region actually haven't been success stories overnight, by and far. They've been long stories. And if you talk to the founders, they'll tell you about how many times they've had to do pivots and change. And they thought it was going to look like this, but it ended up looking like this. So, I mean, it's really not overnight. These unicorns are not born overnight, unfortunately.
But getting back to this whole attitude and also those positive feelings that those startups create, what do you think is their role? I mean, are they shaping the future? Will they dominate the legacy companies, or this is something that will never change the maritime industry?
So definitely, I think startups will change the maritime industry. But okay, so maybe it was mentioned today that software was easier to be like succeeding with than hardware, or like lifelong experiment with seaweed, as we heard. But I don't think that necessarily is the truth, because also it's all about replacing something. And replacement is difficult, because then people need to stop doing what they have done for many years to start doing something new. So I will say it's a different grades of innovation, as was presented by DNV also. Is it like to be more efficient? Then maybe it's easy. If you are talking about replacing existing value chains, that's very, very, very hard.
Oh, that digitalization, as you mentioned, to digital transformation. Mm-hmm.
Ola, what would be your take from the experience collaborating with different companies?
We will kick their asses. No, but it's quite interesting. If you look at the shipping company from a structural perspective, there are 100,000 ships and God knows how many ship owners. So in terms of biofouling management, where we that's the domain we are operating, that is a highly consolidated business. There we have 4 or 5 players that are providing paint or coatings to this. Why haven't they done what we are doing 10 years ago or 20 years ago? They're so invested in their own products and their infrastructure. It's like Kodak, right? They invented the digital camera, but they didn't bring it to market. They went bankrupt. I'm not predicting that the coating companies are going to go bankrupt, but we think differently. We have a different angle to the problem, and we can move faster than them.
All right. Interestingly, that our audience also have an opinion. Most of the people thinking that startups and unicorns are really important, but they're not yet game changers. And however, there's also a big portion of people who think that anyway, the future is decided by the startups.
Yeah, so I think we belong together. Also, unicorns, as I said, might not necessarily be what is giving the society and the companies and the employees most value. But they are something to look up to. But my comment is actually that also every company is different from each other. And if you start analyzing a unicorn, you might also find that this kind of growth and valuation is not correct. I mean, we have many, many examples of that in Norway in these days, going public on a growth exchange public new marketplace. A lot of company went public and they were not ready for that. And the valuation was boosted up by financial people. And then they went a kind of public and they couldn't deliver. So what's the value? I mean, it's just a disappointment for everyone.
I'd like to disagree with all of you here. And actually, today's news will make my point very clearly. And that is a company called Patagonia, which was a startup, which turned into definitely a unicorn. The owner of the company gave all of his shares away in order to help solve the climate crisis. And that was major news today. And that is a game-changing event. And I would totally disagree that the important but not game changers. I think they are massive game changers. And I think that we're only starting to see just see the crest right now.
But Rita, you don't need to be a unicorn to be a game changer.
You absolutely don't need to be, but I think that it helps if you are, especially if you're large enough to make the difference. I mean, the guy had, I think it was $3 billion worth of shares, and now it will be able to contribute over 100 million a year to solving some of the climate crisis issues that we have. So from that perspective, you know, obviously there's going to be a lot of finances and resources and people and jobs and so on and so forth going into solving some of the most urgent problems of today that we're already late for.
Yeah, and if you also look at the take the car industry for an example. It wasn't the established companies that drove electrification. That was Tesla. And the reason for that being a success was the regulation in California that enabled that, in addition to the VC funding that was enabling it, and a brilliant founder, etc., etc. But that would never have happened with Ford, with Volkswagen. We needed a Tesla to shift the direction of that industry. And the same with space and Starlink and all of that. Those are the free thinkers, the creative people that with the drive and with the guts that are willing to take the risk, they change the world.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I also think, while mentioning Tesla, so I was one of the first Norwegian who bought a Tesla in Norway. And I think the main reason for me doing that was not like a kind of precise definition, but I was very attractive of the willingness to invest in infrastructure. So I mean, again, there are no quick fix, but what that guy did, he invested in an infrastructure, and he has highlighted Norway for being a kind of innovation think tank for his infrastructure. And why was that happening? Because we didn't have a VIT on electric car. We didn't have any car industry to protect. All the cars that were made in the Nordic countries was made in Sweden. So we didn't have anything to protect. And then Elon Musk knocked on the government's door. Knock, knock, knock. Here I am. Would you like to give me some advantages to experiment in Norway? Yeah, we have cheap electricity and we have some money here, so you can start organizing yourself. So Norway was, in that respect, a perfect place for him.
And you needed to prove that batteries worked in cold weather.
Exactly. And they didn't. I promise you, they didn't in the beginning.
Okay, but let's get back to our audience, because I think after today's presentation, they're highly excited and they're planning themselves to start now with startups. So Norwegians, we've heard that it's easy to go to Innovation Norway and you get grant. If you're a Lithuanian, you go to Norway and buy a company. But then what's next? I mean, I wanted to ask audience your experience or maybe intuition on what are the, current challenges. I mean, if you currently have a startup, where is the bottleneck? Is it, we've heard many now stories that the legislation has helped someone to scale like Tesla. We've heard about other companies not being, so to speak, interested, but we also heard the story about the talents being so important in scaling. So what is the current status quo for the Baltic countries when it comes to startup growth? What's the bottleneck?
You know, I don't know if I would maybe suggest that there aren't enough startups. I think, let's turn it around here a little bit. We could do with a lot more startups for our region, I think. And that becomes a bottleneck because there's not enough to invest in. There's not enough then venture capital coming into this region to look for investments. We need to develop much more entrepreneurial spirit, I think, here. And I would suggest that maybe that's one of the roadblocks to more success. I mean, it sounds crazy that we need more in order to attract, but I think we do need to scale our startup industry.
But these startups and industry, you think?
Startups? Entrepreneurialism is, I think. It's that mindset. It's entrepreneurial. It's wanting to innovate.
But I agree with you when it comes to innovation and the entrepreneurial mindset. That's important. But look upon startup as an industry, I might disagree with you, because what you want 100 startups in order to make one successful unicorn. And think about the 99 other startups, all the disappointed entrepreneurs, all the dreams that was broken, all the hard work which was put into those startups. What do you think about them?
So I think the startups that fail actually have a lot of baggage that they bring to their next project, and this is very useful. And I think, for example, the United Kingdom has a very good setup for investing in startups, which takes away some of the risk and some of the burden from the angel investors that are really risking a lot by investing in startups because, as we know, 9 out of 10 fail, correct? But what they do is they have a tax benefit for those who invest in startups, so that if the startup fails, you can redeem some of the money that you've invested into the startup, knowing that the startup itself pays taxes already, the startup itself pays salaries already, and there's a lot of know-how, knowledge transfer that goes to the next. So I think it's very positive from that perspective.
That we don't have in Norway. We can talk a lot about taxes in Norway, but we don't have.
So yeah, we need that here too. So yeah, let's.
You shouldn't adopt the Norwegian tax system.
No, we want.
Our investor is actually moving to Switzerland, so we don't have them left in Norway anymore.
Maybe also the lack of startups is, I mean, really you have lack of entrepreneurs, and you might have lack of exposure to relevant problems that they can solve, especially within the blue economy, and you not being, or here in Lithuania at least, having this maritime tradition that not enough people knows about the problems that need solving. So you need to expose people more to those problems that need solving for them to get ideas of how to solve them.
Okay, so more focus on problems then. But anyways, let's take a look to what our audience think. And they think that actually legislation and capital are the major barriers, so to speak, for the startups now to act in this field. However, ideas and innovations are released. So in other words, people really have ideas or visibility on the problems and how they can be solved. So let's use the opportunity now for you to ask the questions. If you have ones, please ask them now. I will monitor. I do not promise that we will answer all, but I'm at least giving you a try. So by now you should be to question and answer slide. I don't know, maybe it's not showing, but anyways, maybe your reflection on what you see on the screen, is that how it's in all the Baltic countries? So we still have differences between Lithuania and then Sweden and then Norway.
So I think, again, it's a little bit difficult to compare companies also across the borders. Because, as you said, in the US, you are also a successful entrepreneur if you don't make it. If you go bankrupt, etc. It's good to share that story. In Norway, if that happens, you would like to disappear into the mountains and go to the cabin and cry, and you will never ever put that on a CV. So that's about culture and attitude.
I think we're trying to develop the right culture here, meaning that we're not going to fear failure for the right reasons. We actually invite startups that have failed to come to the Lithuanian Business Angel Network meetings and explain how they failed, what their learnings are, what they're going to do differently, and so on and so forth. So I think that there's a lot of knowledge to be gained, and definitely I think we grow the more we're exposed to understanding and the more we communicate. So I think that the learning and the education portion is very important, and if they head for the mountains, you're losing a lot.
It's quiet there.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, just myself being so accurate on the time, thank you for the first question. But let's do this even better. Let's actually take it during our dinner, because now the time is over. But I will answer the question. I will find out who has asked, and we will discuss. So for the end, dear panelists, thank you so much for honesty. Thank you so much for so many good advices. I'm now scrolling what's for sale in Norwegian. Otherwise, dear audience, thank you for active participation, and giving the floor back to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Wow.